I spoke with Richard Heinberg at Santa Rosa, California, earlier today. Richard Heinberg, what are the forces at work behind the Saudi decision to call the OPEC meeting, and what is the likely impact?
Well, I think the Saudis are genuinely concerned about the economic impact of high oil prices. I think when prices were back in the range of $80 to $100 a barrel, the producers were very happy because they were earning lots of extra income. But now with prices hovering up around $135 to $140 a barrel, it's clear that this is having really serious effects on, for example, the airline industry, which is really not prepared even to exist with oil at these prices. And we're going to see a major consolidation of the world airline industry as a result of this. It's also having impacts on trucking, and many independent truckers in the United States, for example, are going bankrupt with high diesel prices. So this is a level of impact that could proverbially kill the goose that's laying the golden egg for the oil exporting countries. They don't want to see that happen, and that's why they're calling this meeting.
How big a boost in production will it take to force a significant and sustained drop in the price of oil?
Well, we would be needing something on the order of several million barrels of oil a day of new production in order to significantly lower the price. No one seriously thinks that that level of new production is in the cards or is available. There are some new oil fields coming online this year and next year. In Saudi Arabia, for example, there's Kura-Sanaya and Sheba and Koreas. Some new fields, some old fields being reworked. And this should provide several 100,000 barrels of oil production a day, new production. But that's already being accounted for by Saudi's increased production in response to the high prices. So beyond that, there's very little that can be brought on. We're seeing declining production from countries like Russia and Nigeria and Mexico, and in some cases, very quickly declining production. So it's going to be very hard to make up for that and actually add incrementally to the total.
Isn't it also true that the spare capacity of other Middle East producers is also highly problematic?
Yes, the spare capacity of the other OPEC producers has been significantly eroded in recent years. So really, almost all of the spare capacity is in Saudi Arabia, and even that is somewhat questionable.
So when Saudis and other oil suppliers blame speculators for the high price of oil, are they right?
I think speculation is playing a fairly minor role in what we're seeing. After all, why would one choose to park one's investments in oil futures contracts unless there were signs that supply was not going to meet demand? In effect, it's the fundamentals that are driving the speculation. Now, it's possible that we could see volatility in the price to the point that the price could fall back to perhaps even $110 a barrel. I think it's extremely unlikely that it would fall less than that, because if that were to happen, a lot of producers who are now producing very expensive oil because of the high prices that otherwise wouldn't be produced, they've reopened old oil wells that didn't used to be economical. Well, if the oil price falls very much, they're going to close those questionable wells back down again. Then supply will again fall, and then that will push the price right back up again. So while we may see considerable volatility in the price as a result of the speculation, over the long run, the price has no way to go but up.
And when you say the long run, you mean from now on, I take it, give or take a little fluctuation?
I think what the oil-consuming nations really need to understand is that this is not a temporary blip in the oil market. What we're seeing is a fundamental and permanent change in the global energy economy. We will be dealing with the fallout of this for many, many years to come as prices continue to escalate. Whole industries are going to have to restructure and downsize as a result of this. We're going to have to rebuild our transport infrastructure in much of the industrialized world because we've built it on the basis of cheap oil, and cheap oil is going to be a thing of the past.
Is it also true that the oil fields of the future are going to be more difficult to find and much more expensive to produce, so that even if we find the oil and produce the oil, it's also going to come at a much higher price compared to the past?
That's very true. Many analysts point to the fact that there are enormous amounts of hydrocarbons out there that can be converted into oil. The oil shale of the western United States, the tar sands of Canada, the extra heavy oil of Venezuela. It's true that there are enormous amounts of this stuff out there, but the logistic technical problems of turning this stuff into synthetic crude and bringing it to market are absolutely daunting. This is not going to be cheap oil.
Is the push for biofuels really a part of the solution for the future? It's already had a negative impact on global food supplies, for one thing.
Expert opinion on biofuels has shifted almost 180 degrees in the last year. As recently as a few months ago, most energy experts were touting biofuels as a great opportunity, both for environmental reasons and for energy reasons, to supplement our oil supply. Now, most commentators, expert commentators, are saying that this, in fact, has turned out not to be a very good idea. As you suggested, biofuels are pushing up the price of food, and of course this is a global crisis now. We're seeing food riots in many countries around the world. But also the energy return on the energy invested in growing these crops and turning them into liquid fuels is enormous.
So what is the practical future that you see beyond oil to go down that path that you believe we must go down?
Well, we are going to have to turn more to renewable energy sources, but most of those renewable energy sources produce electricity. Solar, wind, geothermal, tidal power, wave power, all produce electricity. And so we're going to have to reform our transport systems, our agricultural system, to run more on electricity and much less on liquid fuels. And this is going to be a daunting challenge because we're going to have to do this over a fairly short period of time. We don't have the luxury of decades.
In Australia, as part of the short-term political response, there's a debate about whether the tax on petrol should be cut to provide motorists with some relief. What's your message on what we might call Bowser politics?
My message would be that that kind of short-term strategy is, at best, political pandering. It's not going to work. This, again, is not a short-term problem with the oil market. This is a fundamental and permanent change in our energy economy. And we have to begin to see it that way and institute the policies on the scale of the problem.
At the same time, it is a tough reality for politicians to deal with, isn't it? As the price of oil keeps rising, as the political pressure just keeps building, both in the US and here, globally, in fact.
Naturally, politicians want to look for short-term fixes. Also, they're going to want to look for scapegoats, whether it's the oil companies or the oil exporting countries. I'm sure that we'll see a lot of nonsense spoken. Prime Minister Rudd, for example, talked about taking a blowtorch to OPEC. That kind of talk is not helpful. The responsibility ultimately is going to be with consumers because the amount available for increased supply is very, very small, and as time goes on, in fact, supply is going to be declining. So ultimately, we're going to have to simply adapt to this new reality.
Richard Heinberg, thanks very much for talking with us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.